Good morning, everybody. Happy Sunday morning. It is gross and disgusting outside, but I hope that you are still having a great morning. I just finished my Zoom Sunday school, my very first Zoom Sunday school class with our youth, and it was awesome to see everybody, but it was a little sad because Zoom Sunday school classes are just not the same as being in person. It's just kind of weird. Anyway, I am going to share with you guys a couple of thoughts that we had during our Zoom Sunday school class so that those of you who could not join can still read the gospel and learn a little bit about it. This morning we're going to focus on just the first couple of sentences of John chapter 20, verse 19 through 31. I'm just going to share with you the first couple of verses and then a couple of thoughts. So let's dive in. When it was evening on that day, the first day of the week, and the doors of the house where the disciples had met were locked for fear of the Jews, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." After he said this, he showed them his hands and his side. Then the disciples rejoiced when they saw the Lord. Jesus said to them again, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, so I send you." And that is where we're going to stop for today. So a couple of interesting things about this that I just want to point out super quick. The very first thing I want to point out is that the disciples went back to the same room, the same space where they had the Last Supper with Jesus. They were afraid, and so they went to their happy place. My dog is snoring in the background. That is hysterical right now. I don't know if you can hear it, but that's really funny. So the disciples went back to their happy place after Jesus was murdered. They went back to the Last Supper where they last saw Jesus. And I feel like that's something that a lot of us do when we're afraid and when we're scared. We want to go to a happy place. We want to go somewhere where we feel safe and where we feel comforted. So they had there, and they locked the doors because they are terrified of the Jews. They are afraid. They've just watched Jesus get murdered. They are, terrified for their lives at this point, and they just don't know what to do. So they lock themselves in this room, and Jesus appears to them, and the very first thing he says is, "Peace be with you." He doesn't say like, "Oh, hey guys, it's me, Jesus." Or he doesn't, there's none of that. There's no introductory. The introductory itself is, "Peace be with you." So I looked this verse up to see where else it was used. And in the book of John, "Peace be with you," or the idea of Jesus bringing peace, is spoken to the disciples by Jesus just a few chapters before this happens. So in John chapter 14, verse 27, Jesus is talking to his disciples. He's still alive at this point. And he says, "Peace I leave you with you, my peace I give to you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not let them be afraid." So Jesus here in this chapter that we're looking at this morning in 20, Jesus knows that the disciples are afraid. He knows that they are terrified. And so he uses this "peace be with you" moment to calm them, because the disciples already associate now the phrase "peace be with you" with "please don't be afraid. Don't be afraid, and do not let them be afraid." That's what Jesus associates "peace be with you" and "do not be afraid" together. So that's really interesting, and that's really comforting to know that Jesus is trying to comfort the disciples. He's going in there trying to comfort them from their fears. And that's something that I think that we can all really appreciate at this point in time with all of the fear that we have right now with the virus and job loss and all that kind of stuff, stress, anxiety, all of that. Jesus recognizes that in his disciples, and he purposely addresses it with "peace be with you." And he does it twice. In that next part, it says, Jesus said to them again, "Peace be with you." So he really recognizes that and does his best to address it, which I love. I want to point out one other thing. Later on in this chapter, Doubting Thomas, that's the famous name that he got, one of the disciples, Thomas, was not in the room with these disciples when Jesus showed up and said, "Peace be with you." So then these disciples run out and they tell him, yo, Jesus was there. Like, he showed up, and I mean, with scars and all, like, Jesus was there. And Thomas doesn't believe them. So we have here that Jesus comes a week later and shows himself to Thomas. It says, a week later, his disciples were again in the house, and Thomas was with them. Although the doors were shut, Jesus came and stood among them and said, peace be with you. The one thing I wanted to point out here that I thought was really cool was that now the doors are just shut. They aren't locked like before when it says, and the doors of the house where the disciples had met were locked for fear of the Jews. Now it just says, although the doors were shut. So we can see that the disciples have lost a bit of that fear. They have kind of let go of some of that, and they do have a little bit more peace. And Jesus comes again, and again he says, peace be with you. So he still recognizes a little bit of that fear in them and addresses it. So what I hope you get out of this morning is that God is very aware of what we're going through. God is very aware of the emotions that we are feeling and the fear that we have. And God addresses that in very different ways for all of us. He could, speak to us in a lot of different ways. And I don't really know how God speaks to you, but to me, it's through song. The snoring is getting louder behind me. This is great. Oh, to record Sunday school lessons. It's fun. To me, God shows himself through song sometimes. And, I might be in a really dark place or a really sad place, and a song will come on that will just be funny and will just remind me, like, chill out. You're okay. Like, relax. It's really cool how that works. It actually has happened a lot to me before. And so I use music. I make sure that I listen to music whenever I'm in the car or wherever, just to see if God is saying a little something to me. But anyway, please know that God knows what you are going through, knows the pain, knows the suffering, knows the fear, and that God is addressing that with you. You just have to be open, and you have to listen, and you have to believe, not like doubting Thomas. Anyway, all right. Well, I hope you guys learned a little something this morning. And for all you HIEC youth out there, please join us tonight for our office trivia night. I am wearing a Dunder Mifflin shirt to promote that. Office trivia will be on Zoom tonight starting at 4. I will send out the info to you guys via text and email at about 3:45. So hopefully I see you there, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye.